Now you are looking at two 10-year-old boys who cold-bloodedly and deliberately killed James Bulger, who was only 2 years old. Sweetheart, it's not scary, it's just a nightmare. On February 12, 1993, two friends, John Venables and Robert Thompson, were doing what thousands of other boys their age were doing. Actually, they were skipping school, which, as they say, is not uncommon. The boys were heading to New Strand, that's a shopping center in the town of Bootle near Liverpool. Already there, the friends were doing things that their peers don't usually get up to. They were stealing various items, including batteries, a doll, and a can of blue paint. At some point, they tried, let's say, to take a 2-year-old boy away in an unknown direction to do something terrible. But that attempt failed, fortunately. Unfortunately, No. The failure did not stop future monsters, because that same day they found a new victim. That day, Mrs. Dennis Bulger and her son James were also in the same shopping mall. Although the child was only 2 years old and usually stayed in a stroller during such outings, that day her mother decided not to use it. I mean the stroller. This decision will haunt the woman for many, many years. That's why. So the mother and her son went into the store to buy some meat, nothing special. She picked what she needed, went to the checkout, and literally turned away from the child for just a few seconds. Actually, just to pay for the groceries. When the woman turned back, at the very spot where just a few seconds ago her child had been, there was no one. It was just a matter of seconds. She turned around, paid, and turned back. Mrs. Dennis, of course, panicked and immediately rushed to look for her child. She ran out of the store and turned to the left. She started running, asking people if anyone had seen anything, saying, "My child is missing," and many things, like as if those who seemed to be chasing the woman with their hands. Yes, probably the main thing is how everything would have turned out if she had turned right that fateful day. Would her child be alive today? Quite possible.
I turned away for 1 second and never saw my little boy alive again.
So, the reason for the disappearance of Mrs. Dennis's child, as you may have already guessed, were two young delinquents, namely John Venables and Robert Thompson. They took little James by the hand and led him out of the butcher shop, immediately turning right. The woman, as stated earlier, ran left to search for her child, which was the completely wrong direction. Mrs. Dennis found a mall security guard and immediately hurried to describe the situation, as well as what her child looked like. The child's clothing, hair color, and other details. Within minutes, the announcement about the missing child was broadcast over the mall's speakers. However, no one saw anything, no one heard anything, and it was utter despair for the mother, so she called the police. You see, at that very moment, James and his kidnappers were already outside the mall. Later, the young murderers would say that the child they had kidnapped cried the whole time, calling for his mother. The kidnappers did not react to this in any way, and simply led the child where they needed to go. By the way, that's a good question. Did anyone even see these children and the pack? They say it was about 38 people. They saw how James was being dragged away by two 10-year-old boys. Did anyone even do anything? Not at all. By the way, this outrages many people. At first. But honestly, well, who would have thought that these are not, for example, brothers taking their spoiled younger brother home, but kidnappers planning to kill a child? I mean, in my opinion, it looks way less suspicious than if, for example, a child was being led by some man or even a woman, it doesn't matter. And even considering the fact that the child was crying and calling for her mom the whole way, the fact that she was being led by the hand by two others, who were basically also children, made the trio look much less suspicious in this situation. Unfortunately. Approaching the ditch nearby, the boys took little James, lifted him up, and threw him headfirst straight down onto the ground. A woman was passing by nearby. She noticed it, but just kept walking. Meanwhile, little James had bruises and deep scratches on his forehead. The kidnappers decided to hide this and pulled a hood over the victim's head. All this is known because several witnesses saw these children and even noticed the injuries on James's head, but judging by their testimonies, no one paid much attention to it. They thought the kids were just playing together and the youngest fell down. It happens, you know. Later, the two kidnappers even took James to one of the main streets of Liverpool. They were seen there by a whole bunch of people. Moreover, there are testimonies from people who say they saw one of the boys, namely Robert Thompson, kick James. in the ribs for the fact that he kept calling for his mom and crying. A local lady witnessed the incident from a window. It appeared to be a serious situation, not a game or playful activity. The woman simply closed the curtains to avoid seeing the mess outside. That's all she did.
I often heard people asking why no one did anything, why no one intervened. But now all of this is just a feeling of guilt, and I don't think I'll ever be able to get rid of it. I saw them. I heard a baby crying. I looked at them. Oh my God, I looked right at them. And now I am forced to look out that same window every day. Every day I see those children in front of me. When I go to bed, I see them again.
Little Jamesa was almost saved by two other women. Confused by the child's appearance, they stopped the trio and began asking questions about what happened and where they were headed. The little villain switched off the mode of childlike innocence and turned on adult, cold-blooded calculation. They claimed that they had accidentally found this child in such a state nearby, knew nothing, hadn't heard anything, and simply took the child away from where they thought it was dangerous. Then one of the women said that they should take James to the nearest police station because someone must definitely be looking for him. The boys politely agreed that it was a great idea and said they would do just that. That was where they parted ways. The woman believed the boys, but still, something bothered her. She had doubts. She even considered going back to the children and helping them get to the station. But another woman told her that just a few minutes ago she saw James smiling, laughing, and he didn't look at all like he needed any help. Apparently, the battered face of a 2-year-old child was completely ignored by her consciousness. One way or another, the ladies left the children alone and simply continued on their way. A little later, when the news about James's disappearance would be absolutely everywhere, it would catch the eye of that very same woman. To say that she was shocked would be an understatement. The woman immediately called the police, providing all the information she herself knew, although there wasn't much she actually knew. If only she had trusted her doubts back then about the two 10-year-old killers. By the way, there is another woman who almost prevented the horrific crime that happened later. She also saw the boys, also asked what had happened, but she even stated that she would take the child to the police herself. She didn't need help. There's a nuance. The woman was with a child who somehow became an obstacle. Ms. Rosvernulasia turned to another woman and asked her to look after her child while she took the boy to the police station. I don't get why the child was left with someone else rather than going with the parents. The second woman, Ms. Rosvernulasia, asked to watch her daughter declined, saying her dog doesn't like children or something to that effect. While the women were deciding what to do about this, the boys, together with Jameson, disappeared from sight without a trace. Soon, the kidnappers reached the abandoned railway. From this moment, the real horror began. This was not a quick murder due to carelessness or something like that. It was deliberate, prolonged, and gruesome. The boys poured paint into James's eyes, the same paint they had stolen from the shopping mall. They beat him with their feet and hands, threw stones at him, and shoved batteries into his mouth. After finding an iron rod, the young monsters used it as well. As a result, there were 10 skull fractures. And in total, 42 injuries were found on the child's body. Because of such a large number of serious injuries, it was very difficult for the investigators to even determine which blow was fatal. The perpetrators also considered presenting all this as if it were an accident. They wanted it to look like he was either hit hard or even run over by a train. So they left the child on the tracks in a terrible condition and just walked away. The train did come and James's body was torn apart, in half. Later, investigators would say that James was already dead at the moment the train ran over him. The child's body was discovered 2 days later, on February 14th. He was found by 4 children who were playing on the railway tracks. In addition, considering that the child's shoes, socks, pants, and even underwear had been removed, sexual violence was also suspected. However, this was not officially confirmed, but listen to the story until the end because there will be a nuance related to this. At first, the police suspected Robert's and John's parents of the murder, but soon, thanks to surveillance camera footage, it would be revealed that behind this were 2 seemingly completely innocent 10-year-old kids. When he first saw the surveillance footage, James's father, the victim's father, thought that everything would be fine. He reassured his wife that everything would be fine with their son, who was with 2 other children. What could possibly go wrong? A breakthrough in the case happened when a woman saw slightly improved images of the 2 boys on the surveillance camera footage. She recognized John instantly. Moreover, she knew for sure that on that day he was skipping school together with his friend Robert. The woman contacted the cops, the boys were immediately arrested and then interrogated. Were there any police officers at the scene? Absolutely more than that. You see, they assumed that teenagers were behind this murder, but they thought the killer had to be about 14 to 16 years old, definitely not 10. We couldn't believe that children did this. What they described during the interrogations was too horrific for any age. Next, you will hear a real recording from the interrogation of the murderers. If Aishka manages, there will be a translation. If not, there will be subtitles. Or maybe I'll even order a voiceover. We'll see. What time was it? When did it happen?
I don't know.
So what happened?
I don't know. He took us, the child, and just walked around the store. And then he let us go.
Then?
When we were near the church, he let the child go.
And you don't? Did you shake your head?
Yeah, I told him to bring the child back.
You told him to bring it back? Yes,
I told him to bring the child back.
You told him to bring him back.
Don't put all the blame on me.
We're just asking, not to find someone to blame. Calm down, okay? Are you okay? Yes.
He said
That you were together in the shopping area and saw a boy.
We never. I swear.
To God. I swear to God, we never.
Maybe got scared.
He said that you took the boy by the hand and led him out of the store.
That's not true. He's lying.
Calm down.
It's all right. The water is already... Well, that's it. Everything's fine.
It's fine. I didn't touch the boy. I didn't kill him.
Mom, he started to lash out.
He had a brick. Why did he throw it at him?
A brick?
This made him fall?
No.
So, you're saying he threw a brick in his face and he fell but kept getting up?
Yes, he would fall and get up again. He
didn't want to lie down. And what did he say when he threw the brick?
He said lie down.
Why did he want him to lie down?
I don't know. Probably so he'd be dead.
Why are you telling us this? Why?
I killed him.
Bobby, Mom, hurry up.
Just tell them the truth, and it will only take a few minutes. He hit him in the face. I don't know.
Okay, stop. We're already close, right? We're already getting to the truth. But
As a result,
Again receive yet another accusation.
The further the investigation went, the more evidence was gathered that proved the boy's guilt. The blue paint found on James's body was also found on their clothes. There were also traces of blood found on their shoes, and it was James's blood. In addition, the shoe print on the victim's head matched the shoe print of one of the boys, namely Roberta. Interestingly, the criminals were questioned separately, and each of them blamed everything on the other, best friends. But eventually one of them, namely John Venables, fully confessed to what he had done and asked the cops to tell James's mom that he was very, very sorry. But at the same time, Robert Thompson continued to deny everything, basically any involvement at all, until he slipped up. He described in detail what James was wearing on the day he disappeared. On February 20th, 1993, the boys were charged with murder. And from that moment, they were held in custody. The trial itself was to begin in another 9 months. Simultaneously, the city and entire country were in utter chaos. People demanded justice. They were outraged, extremely outraged, even beyond measure. During the trial, the punks were referred to only as Child A and Child B. In the future, their identities will be altered, and they'll receive new names. The young killers were held in protected units with special security to prevent any acts of vigilante justice. The boys' parents even had to be relocated to different parts of the country and given new names as well, due to constant death threats from the public. The protests were, to put it mildly, large-scale and loud. Just look at these shots. Due to their very young age, each of the accused sat on special stools. Otherwise, they simply wouldn't have been visible, as they literally hadn't grown up yet. By the way, because Robert showed almost no signs of remorse, it is considered that he was basically the main initiator of the crime. John, on the other hand, is more well known. The court psychiatrist determined that neither the first nor the second were sociopaths and did not suffer from any mental disorders. In other words, they understood very well what they were doing, what was bad and what was good. Good question, why exactly did they do it? But the investigation was unable to determine what the motive for the crime was. There is only the opinion of the court psychiatrist. He said that the boys wanted to test the limits of power, the limits of what is allowed. One way or another, both received a sentence of indefinite detention behind bars, with the potential for early release after 8 years as mentioned by the judge during sentencing. This was a fact of unmitigated, senseless evil. In this case, evil came in the form of two 10-year-old boys. But 8 years passed and the boys underwent an additional evaluation. They wanted parole. Since the behavior of both the first and the second during their time behind bars was completely acceptable, they were released on parole. Where are they now? That's a tricky question. Any rumors? John Venables, who during the investigation was identified as a known type, was arrested again in 2010 and sent back to prison. This time it was for distributing photos and videos involving people who were still far from adulthood. I cannot speak directly about the individuals' ages to avoid YouTube blocking this video. It's terrible. John was constantly being watched after his release, but he still managed to distribute 57 images over the internet depicting horrific attacks on children aged as young as 2 years old. He was caught right at the moment when he tried to destroy the hard drive with all the data. Later, he admitted that he was attracted to young children. John openly engaged in drinking, drug use, and various other activities. In 2018, he was arrested again and again for the same images. Basically, they were different, but with the same content. As they say, although James's mother actively fought to make sure this man would never be released in principle, he was eventually freed. I assume that now the man lives either in Australia or in New Zealand. It's hard to say for sure since after all the killers were given new identities. Although John, at least a few times, revealed his true identity to new, let's say, friends. Actually, that's why we know so much about him after his first release. And that's also why his identity, by the way, was changed again. As for Robert Thompson, almost nothing is known at all. It is only assumed that he did not leave the country and was never caught for any more crimes. Or, in principle, he simply did not commit any more. After their release, both criminals were forbidden from ever seeing or communicating with each other in any way. Well, that's about it, dear viewers. Honestly, it's just complete trash. I wish for you to stay healthy and take care of yourselves, your family, loved ones, and especially your children. 'Cause you see, unfortunately, sometimes even just a few seconds can change everything like that.